Hello everyone, I'm Diane Mizota. Joining me today via satellite is someone you will all surely recognize. I'm speaking, of course, of Robert Cardillo, Director of the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency. Director Cardillo, welcome, and thanks for taking time out of your schedule to visit with us today.
Well, thank you for the opportunity.
Can you tell me a little bit about where you see NGA headed under your leadership? What are your top priorities as Director?
Well, thanks for the question. I have three. The first one is that we really need to take a hard look at how we're aligning our most valuable resource, which is our talented workforce, against the mission that the nation has asked of us. And so to do that, we've got to start by making sure that we're working against the highest priorities. And then equally importantly, growing that talented workforce in a way in which they can apply the skills that they've developed in a way that's adaptive to and responsive to the growing threats that, quite frankly, the world demands and our customers deserve. My second priority is what we're calling GEOINT service. Not a very fancy term, but a very fundamental value proposition that we owe to our customers and to our partners. What it means is that we will enable access to our content, so our core value that we offer, in a seamless way. It doesn't matter the classification level. The cost of admission is an internet browser and a connection. And after that, you're into our value proposition. Equally as important, and I could argue more importantly to that, is what we get back. We will also be a receiver and a holder and an access point for both traditional and non-traditional partners to contribute their value there as well. So it's a two-way street, or a 10-way street, or a 100-way street. And then third is activity-based intelligence. Now, ABI is just one method within a broader analytic modernization effort that we in the intelligence community are going through. But in this case, ABI is, I think, central to the reinvention and refinement of our analytic profession. And so it's a model-based approach to the most enigmatic challenges that the world presents. It's a way that's going to leverage the big data and many non-traditional access points that we have today and the more that we'll have tomorrow. And it's a way to frame our thinking that will be responsive to customer needs. And so it's those three priorities that I'm focused on today.
When you've spoken about activity-based intelligence, or ABI, you say it's not a system or a platform, but rather a mindset. Can you explain what you mean by that?
Sure, and I'll use my experience in the business to contrast. I was, in the 80s, a hunter of imagery. Imagery was relatively rare, highly classified, and expensive. Today, the analysts are essentially and potentially becoming swarmed by data, overwhelmed in some ways. I think tomorrow the risk is even higher that the environment in which the analyst needs to operate will become chaotic and confusing. And my worry is that we'll transfer that chaos and that confusion to our customers, which is the last thing we want to do. So back to ABI, what it does is it presents a framework, a mindset, a key part of our tradecraft. And the reason I'm specific about it not being a system or a software application or a workstation is because I need the analyst to think through our business in many of the same ways we always have. We need to uncover enigmas, present insight, understanding, ultimately opportunity to our customers. But in that sea of data that I talked about, if we don't have a structure around which to base that fundamental analytic value proposition, I fear we'll get lost in the data, and when we get lost in the data, we are not of value to our customer.
What is GEOINT services, and how will it affect the way NGA does business?
In short, GEOINT service is everything. What I mean by that is if we don't succeed in providing that fundamental business proposition, that is access to our content online at your level of security and at your point of presence in this interconnected world, we can't move to step 2 or step 3. So it's that fundamental, and that's why I describe it as everything. It also, though, is in fact a place in which NGA formally and officially acknowledges that our content is limited and our view is limited, and we need to find ways to take advantage of those alternative and non-traditional views that our customers may have, our partners may have, and the commercial market, academia may have. And I know they have them. And so I see GEOINT services as being that portal, that presence through which we can provide that basic value, but then also acknowledge that we're not the only value proposition in town, and you can contribute your content, your perspectives into that conversation. And I think I know our customer is enriched by the result.
In addition to your role as Director of NGA, you are also the Geospatial Intelligence Functional Manager for Intelligence Community. Can you tell me what that means?
It's a privilege to be the steward of this profession called geospatial intelligence. That first hat that I wear, okay, is in fact a duty or responsibility I have to that profession. So how do I address that position? Really 3 ways. 1, I acknowledge the import of the duty. 2, I accept and understand that the NGA piece of that broader profession is a subset. And 3, if I can't create the conditions in which I can grow and incentivize and recognize the profession for what it needs to be, not just today but in the future, I won't be doing my job. So let me say a few words about what those conditions are. 1, professional standards. We've made great strides with respect to certification and some baselining of what it is to be a geospatial intelligence professional. But we have many, many hard days ahead of us there. But I'm proud of what we've done to date. And when I say we, again, it's NGA, it's academia, it's the commercial market, and it's the services. It's the broad family within this community. 2, though, is not just setting the standards so that GEOINT services, for example, can be successful, but not as fun, but enforcement of those standards. Because quite frankly, standards aren't standards unless there's some mechanism with which to provide a backbone for them. We're making great progress. And when I say we here, quite often the industry and what we now call the non-traditional market, it's becoming more and more traditional all the time, is driving this. Because the commercial market can't afford to be inefficient when it comes to interfaces and applications and interoperability. It just doesn't make good business sense. So I'm ready to take great advantage of that commercial drive and that commercial innovation in standardization. And then finally, the condition that's required is an openness. All too often, and I'll speak from NGA because it's where I began my career, we approach problems, issues, challenges as if we are the beginning and the end of the solution. We haven't been as open as and accepting of outside help and non-traditional access and different ways to think about and present a geospatial problem. And so with that functional management hat on, I do in fact enlarge the conversation, create space for those non-traditional inputs, allow my workforce to take a risk in a way that perhaps they wouldn't before. So it's really all those pieces together with which I try to be successful to follow through on this important duty that I have.
In what ways is NGA promoting industry innovation?
So before I get to promoting, let me talk about first step. In any 12-step program, you have to first acknowledge that there's a shortfall or a challenge. I'm not saying we didn't acknowledge that before I arrived in the director's seat, but I'm elevating that recognition. And I think it's important. It goes back to my comment about sometimes to our customers' disadvantage, we tend to try to hold on too closely to the beginning, middle, and end of these challenges. So first, it's a broad recognition that we can and should be advantaged by the innovation that's in the commercial and academic and foreign partnership market. Second, though, is I've got to create opportunities to take advantage. One is Geospatial Solutions Marketplace, or GSM. Think of it as a place where we can take small ideas, exchange them for small dollars to begin to get intellectual feet in the door, to challenge some of our basic propositions about how to approach an imagery science solution or how to successfully innovate a new piece of the spectrum, etc. All too often we take a multi-year, multi-millions of dollars that are applied, and while there's great advantage in that and some efficiency, it doesn't quite get us the agility and adaptability that, quite frankly, the market offers and demands at the same time. And then another is that, and I give great credit to my deputy, Sue Gordon. Sue is really tackling firsthand some of the acquisition challenges that we have had over time and providing some flexibility and some calculated risk-taking where we can create opportunities in which we may not have before. What I mean by that is all too often we can hinder our ability to take advantage of that commercial application because of a overly strict interpretation of an acquisition policy. Now, let me be perfectly clear. We're not going to be in the business of getting out in front of governmental regulations. We're not going to get outside of the lanes with respect to our duties to be good stewards of the taxpayer dollars. But that said, Sue's confident, and I've got great confidence in her, that we do have flexibility that we're not using today. And by the way, this is a two-way street, or a multi-way street. By that I mean we're going to add some flexibility and some innovation in our acquisition strategy. And we need partners on the other side. We need companies to step up to those requests and to offer and introduce. We don't have to have the first idea and to introduce those ideas into our system.
NGA has been focusing on transparency. Can you explain how a shift towards greater transparency will impact NGA's current and future processes?
I think my first answer might confuse a bit, but it's true. I don't know. But I'm okay with not knowing exactly how the fact of this global transparency, the revolution in our geospatial business, the quake that we all feel beneath our feet, figuratively and literally, in our industry. But I'm comfortable with that. I'm comfortable with not being exactly sure where we're heading. Let me put it this way, though. I'm absolutely confident that if we don't create and engage this transparency in a way to bring in as much as we put out, I think our very core value is at risk over the long term. What I mean by that is, and again, I'll use my career to contrast the point. I could comfortably do my job in the 80s in a secure environment, on a secure network, and not suffer any degradation by not connecting to what was available in the open. So almost 100% of my product would have been produced by classified sources and methods. I won't get into equations because I'm not a believer in them, so I don't know, how that, what the ultimate equation will be, and actually I'm comfortable with not knowing that either. My point is, though, is that I think the basic approach needs to flip. Not for all intelligence problems, but many that we've dealt with, whether it's Ebola in West Africa, whether it's the earthquake in Nepal, whether it's the growing accesses through the opening up of the Arctic. Many of those are going to be fundamentally flipped. By that I mean we'll need to baseline our understanding of the current situation, of the general disposition, of the interaction of the forces that exist today in the open. And the reason isn't because necessarily that's, what we want to do, but that's where the data is. That's where the answers are. Now then on top of that, and I'll circle way back to the beginning and talk about the expert workforce, we're going to have to apply on top of that experience, expertise, understanding, wisdom, in a way, quite frankly, that turns and produces and results in decisions, actions for our customers faster than the adversary. And that'll be the trick, or that will be our value proposition. So finding a way to leverage, again, what I think is an exponentially expanding space here, but leverage it in a way that still advantages our users, our customers, at their point of decision. And to do all of that, we've got to reduce the barriers, both those that come in to the NGA architecture and what we provide out. Once again, I see this two-way street as being, our pathway to the future, and quite frankly, the avenue of our customer success.
Well, Director Cardillo, can't thank you enough for your time. This has been really valuable insight for our Trajectory audience. We appreciate it. Thanks.
Well, thank you for the time. I enjoyed it.
I've been speaking with Robert Cardillo, Director of the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency. More Trajectory on Location coming up.